Despite transfer portal rumors, Carnell Tate stayed firm. He was never leaving Ohio State.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Tuesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And during today's show, we'll discuss what Tate's decision says about Ohio State's future QB1, as well as his thoughts about Brian Hartline being the offensive coordinator. But first, every offseason, we have to get accustomed to Ohio State players being tampered with, and a lot of schools throwing a lot of money at them to say, come to the portal and come play for us. And Carnell Tate, right after the national championship win, there are reports out there that Carnell Tate was trying to be pulled into the portal for $1 million. This school wanted him. That school wanted him. And when you know what he did at year number 2 at Ohio State, it should be no surprise that he was trying to get pulled to another school and not play in Columbus, Ohio. But his plan was to never leave Ohio State. He stayed firm. He knew why he committed to Ohio State. He's been developed while he's been there. He'll be better in year number 3 while staying at Ohio State. And while the plan was never to leave, that says a lot about Ryan Day and what he has built at Ohio State during his time leading the Buckeyes football program. And Carnell Tate's one of those guys that you look at the numbers, you look at his impact, you look at what he did last year, and you only think about what he can do next year. What he can do when there's no Emeka Buka, when he is wide receiver 2 at Ohio State, where Ohio State might have 3 number 1 receivers, he's going to have the second most receptions, yards, and receiving touchdowns, which is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it also makes me think about how great he can be next year. And his decision to stay and him sticking to what he believes in, not going with the wind, not following the money elsewhere, because you can get paid at Ohio State too, especially when you add in the revenue sharing that the schools are going to be able to share with the players. That's another avenue for Tate to make money outside of the NIL, while also being developed by the best receiver coach in the country, while also being coached by Ryan Day, who is one of the best coaches in the country. There's so many benefits to him staying at Ohio State for him individually, but also for the team. But think about what Ohio State would be if Tate left. Would the offense be as good as it's going to be next year as we think it should be? I mean, it's possible. It's possible that Brandon Ennis and then Bryson Rogers and Marlon Graham, maybe Quincy Porter jumps up the depth chart really quickly. I'm not sure. But maybe those guys can quickly fill the shoes of Carnell Tate if he decided to leave. That's possible. But the reality is, homie is staying. Homie's not going anywhere. And he wants to continue to be coached hard by Brian Hartline, by Ryan Day, and by coaches that know him. One thing Brian Smith, who now hosts the Portal for Locked On, which is a college football recruiting and portal show, he talked about the impact of why players commit to schools. Players don't commit to school because of the school, because of the symbol. They commit to a school because of a coach. Think about it. Jack Sawyer committed to Ohio State right after Urban Meyer retired. While he always wanted to be a lifelong Buckeye, and he grew up and he wanted to wear that scarlet and gray, he realized that with Urban Meyer leaving, he needed to believe in the coach that was replacing Urban Meyer before committing to Ohio State. He met Ryan Day. He understood what Ryan Day was all about. He believed in Ryan Day. And he said, I want to play for that guy. I know what Ohio State is, but that guy also fits what Ohio State wants in a head coach. I want to play for that guy, a novice. Ryan Day had no head coaching experience at all. But Jack Sawyer saw something special in Ryan Day, and he said, I want to play for that guy, Carnell Tate. Tate was a guy that could have gone anywhere in the country, a Chicago native, a guy that was talked about as being one of the best receivers in his own recruiting class. He could have gone to Texas or Miami or fill in the blank school and been just fine. But Ohio State's different. Ohio State is a little bit different at the receiver position. Ohio State coaches you hard. They bring the best out of you. There's a certain level of toughness that you have to play at Ohio State, especially under Brian Hartline. There are so many things that make Ohio State the place that it is. And Carnell Tate, yeah, it is Ohio State. But Carnell Tate wanted to be coached by Brian Hartline, wanted to be developed and be a Buckeye, and he came here. And the same came to Columbus, Ohio. And the same thing goes for any other player at Ohio State. Yeah, there may be some guys that say, I'm going to Ohio State no matter what. That's possible. But what's more likely is that guys go to a school because of a coach. There's a reason why you got to recruit. If it was so simple as the symbol recruited itself and a coach was not important in recruiting, you wouldn't have Brian Hartline and Ryan Day and Tim Walton and now Matt Patricia and all these other coaches going around the country to recruit guys. You wouldn't be doing that. But what do you find? You find that it's not all about the symbol. The symbol says a lot. But what says a whole lot more is a relationship that's being built. Well, that's what makes Carlos Locklin amazing. Carlos Locklin is an amazing position coach, leading the running backs. But what makes guys want to come and play for Carlos Locklin is his ability to create relationships. He recently did an interview with the podcast, and he talked about the relationships that he had with Travion Henderson before he got there, the relationship he had with Quinshon Judkins as he recruited Judkins before he got to Columbus, Ohio. He talked about even James Peoples, that he recruited James Peoples out of Texas before he got to Ohio State. And so Carlos Locklin, yeah, the symbol is big, but even when it comes to flipping Turbo Rogers, on late in the recruiting cycle, what happened? It was a relationship that Locklin built with Turbo Rogers that got him to decommit from Alabama to come to Ohio State. Recruiting is about relationships and about the coaches that are going to coach you. And I think when it comes to Carnell Tate, one thing that we left out of this whole equation is that in his interview with 10 TV and Adam King on the sidelines of the Columbus Crew, as he was the match igniter during the season opener, he made a comment during that interview. And he said, I bleed Ohio State. Carnell Tate could have gone anywhere. His exact quote was, the plan was never for me to leave Ohio State. I don't know where that came from, where that started. I bleed Ohio State. Think about what that says about him. What that says about the young man that Carnell Tate is. The young man that last year at Ohio State, he was second in receptions and receiving yards and receiving touchdowns for the Buckeyes. The man for his career in the Scarlet and Gray is just shy of 1,000 receiving yards at 997. He's had 70 receptions and 5 receiving touchdowns in his career. My gut tells me next year that Carnell Tate is going to have, let's just say, 75 receptions, 1,000 receiving yards, 10 receiving touchdowns. I don't think that's unrealistic. We think about Ohio State playing at minimum 13 games, probably going to play 14 to 16 games next year. I'm not here to say how many they're going to play, but it's really likely that Ohio State is going to be a team, assuming the format stays the same, that plays 14 to 16 games next year. And if that's the case, there's no reason why anybody should think that he's not going to have those numbers. Him bleeding Ohio State, I think that you as a fan would enjoy a guy that's done what he's done so far in Columbus, Ohio, making that statement, but also dodging the money that's outside of Columbus, Ohio, sticking to his original decision to stay at Ohio State, to play at Ohio State, and to be developed at Ohio State, and to stick around and continue to build what Ohio State has built under Ryan Day and be coached by Ryan Day, and to see what happens next. Carnell Tate's a guy, could be a all Big Ten, first team All Big Ten guy next year, could be potential All-American because he's that talented, he's that good, and with the coaching and the development that he's going to get over the next few weeks and months, we might see Carnell Tate go off in 2025. One thing that we learned about Carnell Tate during that interview with Adam King of 10 TV is his thoughts about Brian Hartline taking over the offense. And trust me, you're going to want to hear what he had to say about the man that coaches him every single day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points and Anthony Davis for more than 12 rebounds. I love how I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. Prize Picks even offers weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you all for tapping in Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. One thing I love when we get these interviews with players in the offseason is you get to learn about the nuggets, the things that make them go, and also the things that make them a little excited about Ohio State and what the Buckeyes might be in 2025. One of the things that Carnell Tate talked about in his interview with Adam King of 10 TV is Brian Hartline leading the Buckeyes offense in the fall. He's his position coach. He's the reason why he's at Ohio State, not only to be coached by Brian Hartline, but Brian Hartline's track record of being an elite recruiter, being an elite developer, bringing guys in every single year that can push you and potentially take your job. Hey, you want that kind of pressure because that's going to make you a whole lot better. And when I heard Carnell Tate talk about his excitement for Brian Hartline to run the offense in the fall, honestly, it made me excited. Because I am still, oh man, I'm trying to be happy today and not get a little negative. I am still a guy that's kind of a wait and see type of analyst. I know what you've done as a position coach. I know what you have done as a player, both in college football and the NFL. It's just very, very tough to immediately say he's going to succeed when we haven't seen it. It's very similar to whoever's going to be Ohio State's QB1 in the fall. We don't have a lot of data on any of the quarterbacks at Ohio State on their current roster to say they're going to be elite because of the film we have seen. We know what Brian Hartline was as a player at a couple levels. We don't know the kind of play caller that he is. And so that makes me a little bit nervous. But when Carnell Tate gets excited, part of me wants to get excited too. And here's what he had to say about his guy, as he called him, taking over and getting the keys to the offense. Quote, "I'm excited for my guy. I've seen him work day in and day out. I've seen everything he's put into this program, and I'm excited for him to take the keys," end quote. What else can you say, man? I mean, the young man's excited on the sidelines of a soccer game. He's getting the guy to kick off and ignite the season. And he's talking about the guy that recruited him. Of course he's going to be excited. But also, I don't want to just say, of course, he's going to be excited and just push his comments under the rug and say, oh, no, man, we're going to sweep that under here. We're not going to dive into that. No, that excitement is huge. Because my gut tells me that if he's excited, Jeremiah Smith is excited. And Ryan Day is excited. We know Ryan Day has talked about it, how Ryan Day has said that Hartline has paid his dues here in Columbus, Ohio. And that's where he got his feet wet in the coaching. And he's done everything that he's needed to do. And so I know what Ryan Day thinks about him. But hearing a player think about it, not only Jeremiah Smith and believing that Tate and Smith have the same mindset, but also a Max Clare who just came in. Why would Max Clare come to a place where it's just any old place? He wouldn't do it. He strategically chose a place that doesn't usually tie it in at the rate that he was used a year ago to play football next year. Now, yeah, you go from Purdue to Ohio State. It's a massive jump, and one just got a ring. One is aspiring to not be the worst Big Ten team in 2025. There's a different trajectory for both programs. Max Clare knows, even if Chip Kelly's gone, they got a guy right there in-house that I believe can run the offense at a high level. What about the offensive linemen? Carson Hinsman and Austin Serveld and Luke Montgomery and the new guys coming in, Ethan Ananwad, Phillip Daniels, and all those other guys that come in, man, and they're sitting here saying, we could have gone somewhere else. We could have realized that we may have plans on the road to go into the portal, to go somewhere else because we don't want to be coached by a first-time play caller. Not a first-time offensive coordinator. No, it's another promotion for Hartline because he went from OC to co-OC. Now he's back to having that OC tag. They could go somewhere else and go be coached by somebody on the opposite side of the ball that has more experience than Hartline. If Tate has that level of excitement for his guy, I guarantee there are other players on both sides of the ball that have that same level of excitement for Brian Hartline. The novice piece is real. I'm not trying to be negative when I talk about him being green as a play caller. I know there have been times previously that Ohio State has done some mock games and allowed Hartline to get a feel of play calling, even in a scrimmage where it's not a true game setting, where you're not in front of 70 to 110,000 people, and there's a pressure of third and 4 with a minute and a half to go in the first half, and you're trying to run a 2-minute drill or a 4-minute drill, and you realize, this didn't work out like we want to. What can we do? You only get those reps by getting in game time. That's it. I mean, how did Ryan Day become such a good play caller? How did Chip Kelly become such a good play caller? How do they get the feel of a game and the flow? By doing it. That's the only way. Same thing with you and your occupation. I don't know what you do, but I guarantee with whatever you do, you are better now. Maybe it's year 2, maybe it's year 25. Whatever it is, you're probably better now than you were when you first started. Why? You got more reps. When I sold cars, I haven't talked about these stories in a long time. When I sold cars from 2016 until April of 2020, that was a time period in my life where I was doing something new. I had aspirations to be a car salesman for a long time, even going back to 2012 when I moved to Arkansas, lived there for 13 months. I tried to be a car salesman. It didn't go with the other job that I had and some other responsibilities, so I didn't take the job. But being a car salesman seemed interesting. It seemed different. It seemed like something that I could do. I could talk to people. I talk for a living with you guys every Monday through Friday. And I thought I could do it. Got the job in 2016 in July. Went on a destination wedding in 2016 to Jamaica for my cousin Joseph, and then all of a sudden come back to the States and get home and start selling cars. I had no idea what I was doing. None whatsoever. I see the movies and I hear about the stories about this lazy guy here and a guy that only wanted to take my money, didn't care about me or mine. I didn't know. I heard the stories, but I had no experience. If you looked at me when I first started selling cars, the moment I sold my first car, man, I was so happy. I was excited. They tried to cut my tie, which is a weird tradition that when you sell your first car, they cut your tie that day. I said, nope, you ain't cutting my ties. The tie I was wearing that day, don't know how I remember, it was actually free. You're not cutting my tie. But I remember, man, I was so excited, man. All of a sudden, over the next few weeks and months and a few years, I realized early on when I sold cars, I could sell a car. I could talk you through it. I didn't know the whole road to the sell verbatim, and I didn't know like the back of my hand, but I do know I could do a little bit good. But then I got better and better and better. I figured out how to talk to people, and I know how to approach someone that was pulling up in a Jaguar versus somebody that got dropped off via Uber. I knew how to work with someone that had a family of 5 that hopped out of a minivan versus a single man or a single female that pulled up in a 2-door car. Whatever it was, I figured out how to adapt. I figured out how to work with different scenarios, and I figured out the things that worked in different, even times of year. You got to figure out the whole thing out. And how do you get that experience? By doing it. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to get your nose in there and just get those reps in. I like the excitement that Carnell Tate has, and despite the thoughts that even a lot of people that outside the program have that are valid, when players believe in you, that's going to help you do a lot of good things in the upcoming year for Brian Hartline when he's the offensive play caller for the first time in his coaching career for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Carnell Tate's decision to stay at Ohio State speaks volumes not only about Ohio State and Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, but also the future of Ohio State when it comes to the quarterback position and specifically Julian Sayin. Thank y'all for tapping Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. If you're a newcomer to Locked On Buckeyes here in the offseason, welcome and thank you for tapping into the show. Make sure you subscribe or follow Locked On Buckeyes on the YouTube and wherever you listen to your fine podcast. Make sure you hit that bell on YouTube and hit that notification button on any other app to make sure you get notified anytime a new show goes live. We're also going to try to do another Q&A section or mailbag episode on Friday. You submit your questions. I'll answer them. Those questions, call for questions will be posted on the community tab on the Locked On Buckeyes YouTube page. Ohio State's quarterback position has been one that everybody believes is going to be elite every single year. From Justin Fields to C.J. Stroud to Kyle McCord to Will Howard. Everybody believed whoever was going to be Ohio State's quarterback They had a chance to be elite. Kyle McCord had a little hiccup in his 1 year being the QB1 for the Buckeyes. Will Howard played out of his mind a year ago and way better than a lot of people expected. Justin Fields and CJ Stroud, those are all-time Buckeye great quarterbacks. The next guy that I think is going to be QB1 for the Buckeyes is Julian Sayin. I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm going to be saying this thing all offseason long until we get into spring practice and realize, oh, maybe this thing is closer than what we thought it was going to be. I think Sayin's the guy. I also have a feeling that Carnell Tate would not have stayed at Ohio State if he didn't have a belief in the quarterbacks that are currently in that quarterback room in Columbus, Ohio, and especially in regards to Julian Sayin, where in-house they are saying that Julian Sayin is a guy that believes the next big guy, next big thing. He has the goods. He has the ability to process things. He has the ability to have the arm talent. He has the ability to connect with his teammates. He has the goods, and he is making to being the next great Ohio State quarterback. I can't say it yet, but I have a great feeling, just like James Peoples, to talk about him earlier recently. He has an opportunity to be another guy that's a great Buckeye quarterback. I don't believe Carnell Tate would have stayed at Ohio State if he didn't believe Ohio State would get the quarterback position correct. I don't. I have no reason to believe that he would have made the decision if he had a doubt that Ohio State would have the wrong quarterback in Columbus, Ohio. I think it's an easy, no-brainer thing, but there may be somebody that says, no matter who the quarterback is, I'm staying here. I'm going to work. I committed here. My word is my bond, and I'm not going anywhere. That is a real thing. But, man, when you get guys like Jeremiah Smith, who I have heard was offered more than $4 million to go to a school down in the South, and Carnell Tate was offered more than $1 million to go to a school down in the South. I even think Jeremiah Smith's offer was over $5 million, to be honest with you. And those guys stay at Ohio State. It says a lot about Brian Hartline, but, man, I think it says a lot about Julian Sayin, too. And one thing when it comes to a guy who's a newcomer, who was only a freshman, all of a sudden you realize you're about to get the keys, just like Brian Hartline got the keys to the offense. You are in the running. You're in the front of the line to get the keys to the quarterback room. Man, your responsibility gets a little bit different. And the players around you realize, I don't want to play with that guy. No matter how much money they're throwing at me, and they may pay me more elsewhere than I might get here where I currently am. I believe in you. I came here to play for that man and for these colors, and I'm not going to anywhere else. I'm going to ride this ship out no matter what happens. And I believe in you. You came here to be a Buckeye quarterback, and you are the guy that has the goods. And I even think of Devin Brown leaving says a lot about Julian Sayin, because I don't think Devin Brown would have left if he didn't believe that Sayin was going to be the guy. It just makes so much sense. I think about this also, about Julian Sayin being the guy and him being a freshman quarterback last year. And we all know the skinny kid had longer hair. I almost say wild hair. It was just longer hair. I almost said wild, but I was like, no, it was just longer hair. All of a sudden, on the day of the national championship celebration, he had shorter hair. He's looking the part. And I think about that. I think about a coach I recently talked to who took a new high school job in the area. And before, at his previous stop, he was talking to the freshman quarterback who was the projected starter in the upcoming season. And he looked at him and he said, hey, man, you're no longer a youngster anymore. You got to start acting like a starting quarterback. Those weren't his exact words, but he is saying your maturity level, even as a sophomore, 15 or 16 years old, however old that kid is, your maturity level has to be different than your peers. Your peers being sophomores, they don't have the responsibility of leading an offense in high school. They don't have the responsibility of leading juniors and seniors on a Friday night under the lights and being there on homecoming and on senior night and traveling around and trying to win the conference. They don't have the responsibility of leading these other 10 guys you're out there on the field with to score and to be very successful and to stack wins. They don't have the responsibility, but you do. And what do you know? I haven't talked to that kid recently. He's currently in basketball season. I haven't been over there to talk to him yet, but I do know this. That responsibility is huge. It's a big one. It's a heavy load to carry around, but it's one that comes with massive responsibility. And if you go around to talk to any quarterback at Ohio State or even at the high school level, they'll tell you the moment they became QB1, there's a weight that was on their shoulders. And they realized all this is on me. You can even say all eyes on me. Whatever you want to say, this is on me. And I got to make sure these are the guys that I'm on the field with. And I got to make sure the coach has full trust in me. And I got to make sure the fans in the stands understand that I am the guy to lead us to the promised land. There's a weight. There's a burden. It's not really a burden. You may call it a burden. It's just a weight. But also, there's a maturity factor that comes when you're a youngster, a freshman that's preparing to be a starting quarterback during your true sophomore season. Just like the local kid that I talked to, and just like Julian Sayin, they got to figure it out, man. Just like Hartline. The only way Sayin can figure it out is by getting his nose dirty and getting in there and battling it out. And as the Buckeyes inch closer to spring practice, and even before that, the NFL Combine, you're going to realize, and through some of these interviews during the NFL Combine, some of these quarterbacks get it. Some of these quarterbacks don't. These are 3 and 4 or 5 year guys that have been around for a long period of time, and you would think they'd all get it. But some of them don't, and they'll be able to hear some of that in the interviews and some of the reports that come out of Indianapolis, Indiana via the Combine later on this week. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. And for Sayin, you hope he gets it. You hope that he's able to pick up what Brian Hartline's putting down and laying out in front of him. And I think Tate's decision makes me believe that he believes Sayin has the goods. Or whoever the starting quarterback is at Ohio State has the goods. Remember in the offseason, Jeremiah Smith was doing a preseason interview. I believe it was during fall camp. And that young man was talking about Will Howard. He called Will Howard my quarterback. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, and this is before Howard was named the starting quarterback. And I'm thinking, if Jeremiah Smith's calling him my quarterback, he's not saying that because he believes that Howard's the backup, and he's calling his quarterback the backup because Smith is going to be the backup receiver. No, everybody, their mama knew Jeremiah Smith was a day one starter. But I was sitting there thinking about him calling him my quarterback and making those statements there, and thinking about that belief factor, and thinking about what it meant for Will Howard to know that there's a youngster that believes in me. And nobody thought Will Howard was going to play this way this year. We all thought, and I know on this show we discussed numerous times, and even in August, that Will Howard's going to have a career year. Did I know what it was going to look like? No, he wasn't the most accurate guy. Couldn't make all the throws. He was limited in his passing ability. He didn't have the strongest arm. There were just so many factors of his game at Kansas State that made me believe that he didn't have the goods. Yeah, career year was great. I didn't see what we got this past year. Going 13 for 13 to start the game in the national championship, going 81% in the Natty. I think it was 6 games in the regular season. He had a completion percentage of over 80. Nobody saw that coming. But what do you find? As he got on that field, who believed in him? The players around him. From number 2 to number 4, number 17 to number 11. To Will Kazmarek, to number 88 and G. Scott Jr., to Trevion Henderson, to number 1, Quinshawn Judkins, the 5 Hog Mollies up front. They believed in him. Hartline, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, all these players, all these coaches that were new to him and new to him being a quarterback, they all believed in him. And the next thing you know, we got a career year from Will Howard. That is one thing that we will remember for a very long time. Is he a CJ Stroud thrower? No, Stroud's a precision ball thrower. That's that placement and the accuracy on 100, man. It's insane. Well, truly 99. You can't go to 100 in the game. He doesn't have the athleticism of a Justin Fields. And even some of the balls that Justin Fields threw in Columbus, Ohio, Will Howard couldn't do that. But what did you find? A game catered to Will Howard's strengths. A game that allowed Will Howard to expand, and also a game that saw Will Howard have the complete trust of his teammates. I think Carnell Tate's the same way, man. I think his decision to stay in Columbus, Ohio, has a lot about his faith and trust in Julian Sayin. There's other quarterbacks around the country. A lot of really good quarterbacks. Sayin has a talent, Sayin has the goods. Sayin can process. All we're waiting for is for him to be the guy that's leading the offense for the Buckeyes, and they're going to get that in the fall. Thank y'all for tapping in Locked On Buckeyes right here on a Tuesday. If you're making this show your first listen of the day, for a second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on any social media platform at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317 at gmail.com. It's been Locked On Buckeyes right here on a Tuesday. We'll see you next time.